Today on Coffee with Dr. A, I want to talk about how I transitioned from avoiding online courses to absolutely loving them. A little more than a year ago, one of my colleagues asked me if I would ever teach online. And without hesitating, I told them that my teaching style is not meant for online education. See, like many, I believed online education wouldn't allow me to be an effective teacher. I believed that my energy and enthusiasm could not be replicated in an online classroom. I also believed that online courses didn't allow the community to develop. I couldn't see how it was possible to engage students in a virtual setting. Well, over the past year, due to the pandemic, and like many teachers, I've had to move online. I have invested so much time studying and learning how to create engaging and productive virtual education. It's been the best thing that has happened to me in my teaching career. I found new excitement and energy for teaching. I've gone from someone that avoided online education to someone that believes the future is in online learning. Over the past 9 months, I've been invited to lead workshops, professional development, and discussions on how to best transition to online education. I thought I would create this 3-part series on why I think future belongs to online education, which is this video, another video on how to design online courses and build connections in online settings, and finally, the resources you need to be an effective online educator and the basics of how to use them. If you're new here, I'm Dr. A. I am an associate professor of economics and the director of the Center for Economic Education at Northern Kentucky University. I've made it my career mission to increase economic and financial literacy awareness in our community. I believe everyone would be better off with a better understanding of economics. Grab a cup of coffee and let's talk about how I became a big believer in online education and why you should invest in developing your online learning. The most common thing I hear about online education is not as effective as in-person or face-to-face education. Or I often hear students say, online courses are just not the same. Well, I agree. Online education is completely different than in-person education. However, it is not necessarily less effective. When is it less effective? It's because educators were forced to take what they did in face-to-face environments and shift it to online settings. And that just doesn't work. It reminds me of this cartoon that criticizes our education system. If you haven't seen it, it has a bunch of animals, a monkey, penguin, elephant, fish, a seal, and a dog sitting in front of what is supposed to be their teacher. The teacher assesses their abilities by asking them to take the same exam. Each animal has to climb a tree. The cartoon has been linked to Albert Einstein's quote, "Everybody is a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing that it is stupid." I often think about that when I hear the debates about online versus face-to-face education. I think we're judging online education by how well it can replicate face-to-face education. It's a new tool that should be used differently, and it provides new ways to engage learners. Forcing what we do in person into an online course will be disastrous to all students, educators, and administrators. The other thing that I often hear is the phrase, "when we go back to normal." This is the hope or desire to go back to the way things were, and I'm not sure that's going to be the case. Students often talk about how much they prefer in-person education, but the reality is that this shift due to the pandemic will increase the expectation that each course will have an online component. Whether it's instructor-created videos, meetings via Zoom, or group work in virtual settings, the secret is out. Virtual connections help reduce some barriers, and we will need to consider how we incorporate them in our lives. I totally understand the reluctance to change. Psychologically, change creates uncertainty and fear. We feel like we might be losing something, even if it's just the sense of comfort or our routine. In this situation, the pandemic forced a drastic change on us in such a short period of time. Overall, at least at my institution, the transition went better than we could have expected. But now that we have had some time to adjust, we need to start thinking about the future, and that means investing in online education. Online teaching is here to stay, and we need to adjust how we teach. So what exactly is needed? First, we need training for educators. In my professional development workshops for higher education, I spend a lot of time talking about how to redesign your courses. Next week's video will go into more depth on course design and content development, but this is an area that most educators need more support. Administrators should be investing in building educator skill set to teach online. This is one area where I would like to see more investment. Teaching online requires high startup costs. For those of you that have seen my previous video on video creation setup, that I spent a lot of money getting started on. Since making that video, I had to move across continents. That's a long story that I might share some other time. But due to the move, I had to reinvest in new office setup. My students loved my videos. As they said in the evaluations, and I quote them here, these videos were professionally done. I'll take the compliment. They also said they loved that the videos were made by their professor. My students, seeing how much I invested in creating course content, showed them that at times we might face difficulties, but with the right mindset, a growth mindset, it's possible to tackle these difficulties together. Creating your own videos might seem to be overkill, especially with so many resources out there. But if you're able to, I think these videos that you use for your class should include you in them. I would love to see higher ed invest in providing video support. Feel free to reach out to me if you have questions about how to get started with video creation. The market perception is that online education is inferior to in-person education. As I said already, it is not inferior, it's just different. I also believe online education may not be for everybody, but neither is in-person education. Moving forward, after the pandemic, our higher education institutions will have to invest in both formats. For online education, we must admit that we haven't invested enough in it. It's here to stay, and we need to do more. In next week's video, I'll talk about how I redesigned my courses to be better suited for online learning and how I modified them for asynchronous and synchronous formats. I'll also walk you through my strategy with content and material development. I'll also talk about my motto of connections before content, which I picked up from Chad Littlefield, a great resource for those interested in more content. I'll link to some of his videos below. I would love to hear your thoughts about online education and your experience with the shift during the pandemic. Please share in the comment section below what your most challenging part of the transition to online education was, and what topics would you like to see in the future on this channel that will help you with moving online. I'm always eager to share my expertise to help you. See you next Friday at 9 a.m. Eastern for Coffee with Dr. A.